I'm sorry I missed our first few minutes unrecorded. Um, but at least from here on the 9th of May in 2023, we are recorded for eternity. Hi, Reeve. Yeah, you're muted, so we can't hear your responses. You know, that's such an unnatural state for you to be muted. So really see if you can fix it on your computer. We'd love to hear from you. We all were entertained, I'm sure, by however we tuned in real time or afterwards to the coronation. You know, it's I find it entertaining to see such ancient history being reenacted. You know, in the Great Crown. You know, we always saw the Anunnaki lords with huge tiaras, and I suspect they had huge heads. Whoops. Yes, Reeve.
So maybe I can hear you this way.
Okay, well, we can hear you. This.
Okay, I can now hear you. Before I couldn't.
Oh, really?
Good. Carry on.
Okay. Multi-channel work here. Okay. Reeve is joining us through his phone and my phone. Okay. So, but also interesting. You notice what's on? Did you notice what's on the top of the crown? The orb and cross, the golden globe. Mm-hmm. Surmounted by the Greek cross, the cross of 4 equal arms. So the two ancient symbols of Nibiru, the golden orb in the sky, coming every 3,600 years, you know, and the cross standing for the planet of the crossing because of the way it crosses through the inner solar system. So it's delightful. To see, oh, the symbols are still with us. As to me, that's a great reminder that the behaviors are still with us, the thought patterns are still with us, their reaction systems are still with us, man, the customs are still with us, just like the orb and the cross, and the high hats. There are plenty of high hats, like the British bearskins, you know. The North Koreans have very high, the military had very high hats also. And the anointment, you know, making it clear that the king really is divinely appointed. That goes back to what we can tell from the records. The human kings under the Anunnaki were each of them were anointed by both the god of the city where they ruled and Enlil, who was the lord of command for the entire Anunnaki culture. And before then, before the flood, the Anunnaki kings, before men of renown got to the thrones, the Anunnaki kings, if we look at the king lists in the tablets, the reigns of those kings whose lives were clearly extended by the bread of life and water of life, Their reigns were all multiples of 3,600 years, which suggests that the beginning of a reign was supervised by On, because that's when Nibiru was present. So it's very likely that the kingship itself on Earth, even when it was purely an Anunnaki thing, and humans were not really involved in it. Humans were no more than slaves at that point. But the Anunnaki kings were anointed by their, I wouldn't say God, but but their ruler, their divine ruler, which is pretty cool. Hope Charles has a better fate than his namesakes. Number one and number two didn't wind up so great. Okay. Two more things that are on my list, and maybe there'll be more that come up. But one has to do with incest. One has to do with I'll tease you with has to do with the Grand Dragon. And then some thoughts about another kind of angle on what's going on. Incest. Linda's connected me with an article about a place that if you get a chance to visit, really extraordinary. It's a passage tomb about an hour north of Dublin, and the amazing thing about it is that it's the best restored of the many monuments throughout the British Isles. And it was really magnificently rebuilt, or well, fixed up, put it that way. And the passage tombs, they're called that because inside this enormous mound, okay, there is a passage from the eastern end of the structure into a chamber at the very center, at the inside the hill. Okay. There's an aperture above the entry door in the stonework that is placed so that a beam of light from the rising sun at the winter solstice sunrise, like one day before the day of the solstice or one day after, works its way down this not quite straight passage, which allows a very narrow beam to hit the chamber at the center of the mound. And that was a big turning point in the year when it's getting darker and darker and darker, and then the year is reborn. And the sun does not go out. The sun does not continue to march into a smaller and smaller path and turns around and starts to increase the size of its transit through the sky. So we really don't know what the ceremonies were like and what the purpose was, or what meaning they gave. The interpretation now is that it was a tomb. Well, it could well be that the bones of an important personage was placed there, but that doesn't mean that it was built for the purpose of his being interred there. It may have been, this fantastic space that they created inside this earthen world, and that was a great place to put someone who was revered, and but it doesn't mean that it was made for him. So it shouldn't be thought of as a tomb in that sense. I don't think that's an invention on our like we think that the pyramids were tombs for the pharaohs. That's nonsense. But it's almost in this article, it says almost universally agreed that something discovered in the bones of the king or whatever it was, it was really remarkable. They most recently found that both of his parents were first degree relatives, like brother, sister, for example. It's amazing what they can do with fragments of DNA in bones that are thousands of years old. It just blows my mind. Think it can actually reconstruct the chromosome. But anyway, so it's pretty solid science, I believe. No reason to doubt it at this point. Okay. This was a mating of two people who were closely related and produced the next generation. And as a matter of fact, they have found the same some of the same markers in other tombs around Ireland. So it's got hints of a royal lineage here. Let's see. So there's incest, you might say. I don't find it not a good word. It's got such a negative connotation. Okay, but there's the marriage of closely related people, and then there's the taboo against it. Linda, you have a thought rising.
Yeah, I think about this, because it seems to me that even ancient people should figure the genetic declination of the family line is associated with that kind of brother, sister, or cousin mating. I mean, it's hard for me to believe I'm assuming their genetics was like ours. You would notice in a couple generations, brother sister mating, you would start having real problems. So the other side of this is, I recognize that if you have a lot of resources, wealth, something, and you want to keep it in the family, then that kind of brother sister mating makes a lot of economic sense. So I keep thinking there's got to be another factor involved.
Yes.
There's got to be another factor involved. It doesn't make any sense unless there's something else going on besides.
Well, we don't hear much about the failures of that type of breeding.
Well,
in the royal,
wouldn't we? I wonder if the closer we were, if Anunnaki were good enough at genetics, they probably could have removed a lot of
defects in
the recessive lethal stuff, the recessive stuff that we have in the genome now.
Yeah, as far as we know, they didn't have any anti-abortion laws.
Well,
so they could have cleaned things up, so to speak.
But there are an awful lot of lethals in the human genome. A lot of things that go wrong. The number I've always seen is that roughly half of all fertilized embryos, all things being equal, not being interfered with, only half of them make it to term, because there are lots and lots of things that can go wrong, and that includes these genetic things that happen with brother-sister matings and stuff like that. So it's just, to me, it seems like I said, there's got to be something else besides the factors that we know about, which makes me think this might have something to do with the Anunnaki.
Yes, there's something else.
Yeah.
There's something else going on. Now, the retaining wealth, that's pretty clear advantage. But more specifically, what we know about Anunnaki culture is retaining rights and privileges and rank. Okay, because that also went along with the family lines. There are certain things that you could have if you were the offspring of the man, but not of the woman. So there were all sorts of intricacies of importance, of social importance, up in the elite world. Okay,
but just, I mean, just at from the get-go, the hybrids lived hundreds of years. I mean, they had these excessively long lifespans, right? Is that not correct?
The hybrids? No,
Yeah.
the Anunnaki themselves.
Well, the Anunnaki themselves.
And then some of the hybrids, had long lives on a probably, we don't know if they were given anti-aging medicine or not, but Methuselah, and his cohort, probably did have very, very long lives. Yeah. And some of that must have been on a genetic basis. Now, we like to give biological rationales for powerful customs, so yeah, we can say, I'm gonna come around to a whole different view of it. We could say, yes, the inbreeding issues, they led to the incest taboo, in human societies, maybe. Okay, but we have, again, we lean too much on the rational biological, like some people say, well, the reason that the Hebrews were not allowed to eat pork is that they knew that pigs carry trichinosis. Nonsense. But we look for those things. It's more likely there are religious or some historical basis for these beliefs, like for example, the sacred cows in India. Where the hell did that come from? Well, Ninmah, the mother of mankind, and Enki's partner, half sister, by the way, Enki's partner, in the original engineering of humankind, later in life was known as the cow. He was, I guess, putting on a bit of weight, and that wasn't very nice, but that's what that was her nickname. Velikovsky had an idea that, and I think this is a bit far out, but maybe it's true, that they, even without telescopes, they knew that Venus, the planet Venus, had phases like the moon has phases, and that the arc of Venus was the planet of Inanna, the goddess Inanna, that was like the horns of a cow, and that's how the horned animal became holy. That's a bit of a stretch, but it could be, not impossible. Now, there's good, historical records for some of the paired marriages. Akhenaten, who was Amenhotep the fourth, okay? He was 3 generations down from Amenhotep the first, who was according to the records, you know, there were 3 generations of brother sister marriages leading to him. So Akhenaten was the product of at least 6 brother sister marriages in sequence, and then he had a sister that he married, and producing King Tutankhamun, who died very early, and I don't think we know the cause of his death, but it was not violent. You know, he was a boy king and he died very, very young. Okay, so you know, according to the record, he was the 7th in a row of brother sister marriages.
You know, I don't think you could get 7 brother-sister marriages to produce fertile offspring. I just don't think that's possible today.
Okay. Oh, that may be, you might say, a result of historical fiction.
Yeah. How much is left out? If there's a defect in the royal line, who's gonna proclaim that?
And maybe, you know, and it gets a little more complicated when in other traditions they're half sisters, not full sisters, half sisters. So they share one parent, not 2.
Well, that helps, but even still,
Well,
I mean,
anyway,
we
you
don't.
know,
I mean, we don't have that. The experiment hasn't been done, I don't think. Not that I know of. So.
by the way, Akhenaten was already showing signs, you know, of trouble, because he had a mucopolysaccharide disease.
That's right.
An unusual face and swollen legs. Okay, and a little interesting side story, which is in Velikovsky's terrific book on Oedipus and Akhenaten, that you know, Akhenaten was the king in the royal city that he created, Thebes, in Egyptian Thebes. Sophocles' play of Oedipus takes place in Greek Thebes, and Oedipus means fat foot. Okay, and his Egyptian model had fat feet. The sculptures of him, the carvings of him, make that very clear. You know, they were not making him any prettier than he actually was.
Huh.
And he got, you know, in the same way that Oedipus got punished for his incest, you know, Akhenaten got punished. He was one of the first figures in history to be totally canceled. You know, he was canceled by the priests because he went against the ancient pantheon, but maybe for other reasons too. You know, maybe there was some incest in his picture too. Velikovsky thought so. Velikovsky thought that Akhenaten actually had a sexual relationship with his mother, but you know, not sure how sound that was.
Great. Just let me. I want to endorse your reference to that book. First of all, it's a work of genius. It's doubtful that anybody I've read pulled that into question. One of the great books of I don't know how much relevant it is a person's life, but for God's sakes, it's a great book. And the rest of Velikovsky, I'm glad you bring them up from time to time. And you know, of course, I wrote 4 books on it, but now in 1 volume. If anybody's interested in reading Velikovsky, but carry on. I thank you for mentioning that again. And I appreciate all the things he was saying today. So I'm glad to be in on this. I just wish I were able to get, how do we say, more into it when, as you go along. I just don't like to interrupt. So forgive my interruption, and thanks for bringing up Bellatowski, of course.
Please, everybody, interrupt ad lib. So the, I used the term before, historical fiction. Well, sacred text, the Bible is historical fiction, and the best way to look at it is like, well, we have the character that's in the story, and then behind or underneath or within the character, there was a real person having a real life, and there's some correspondence between the two. So Abraham, who was originally named Abram, okay, the generator of the Jewish line, you wonder, is it just coincidence that Abram in Hebrew, is so similar to Anu, which is in the earlier, the first Semitic language, Akkadian, the name of the king of Nibiru. Anyway, the king of Nibiru married his half-sister, and that was considered the most glorious, illustrious marriage amongst the royals on Nibiru. Could it be coincidence that Abram, later Abraham, in the Bible, married his half-sister? So either that really happened or it's a great story. Okay, a great story reflecting an earlier story, which maybe reflected reality. Maybe it really did happen that way on Nibiru. Okay. It was one of the things which gave Enlil, who was the product of that marriage, a higher rank than Enki, whose mother was not the mother of Enlil, the half sister of the king. And there are hints of connections here. In the Inanna, who had several different names, of course, all of the names are meaningful words. Inanna means beloved of An. Is her grandfather. Is that suggesting some connection other than he really liked her? Anyway, Ninmach and Enlil were half siblings, and they had Ninurta, the god Ninurta, as their offspring, and Ninmach and Enki were half siblings, and they had twin daughters who, as far as I can tell, I can't identify, I can't find their names in the tablets, but they had twin daughters, one of whom married a son of Enki, so there was a lot of these connections going on. So I'm going to make a suggestion that popped into my mind today, or dropped in from above, I don't know where, but what if the relationship between the sibling connections in the Anunnaki and in royalty modeled on the Anunnaki, and the taboo the other way around? What if the taboo got established in societies because that kind of relationship was a privilege reserved for the elite, and no one else was allowed to have it? It's like you can't hunt the king's deer, well, you can't marry your sister because that'll make you too much like, or you can't even marry your half sister. I don't know, but it's like maybe it's the other way around. I don't
I
know.
don't know.
Well, from a human standpoint, from this human standpoint, that doesn't seem like it would happen like that. It would be considered like that. It would be considered that only the royalty can patch up the defects that are absolutely guaranteed to happen.
Yeah, something like that, right?
Who
That's
who
a-
who
yeah.
wants a working peasant with a club foot? Nobody.
Well,
But
and it's
you-
worse than that.
but you could-
I was
yes,
spending a
let's-
little time calculating. I
Let's-
think every brother-sister mating increases by several orders of magnitude the likelihood of having a major defect. Like, and those major defects include embryogenesis. I don't think you'd be able to reproduce after that many brother-sister matings. Today, the way the genome works, which makes me think that, well, if the Anunnaki have been around forever, right? And maybe they haven't improved their personalities over their hundreds of thousands of years, millions of years, whatever. But maybe they improved their genetics. I mean, maybe they were able to sort of tease out the lethals in their genome so they could get away with it
And that may have been
or
a
something like that.
significant piece of their longevity too.
And yes, exactly. I mean, if you're twiddling with the genome, why not? I mean, right now there's something going on where they're finding ways to vastly improve lifespans of cells in culture. I mean, things that are telling us that we understand how things, why we don't live very long and stuff like that. So it wouldn't surprise me at all if those were, so that their genome was so improved that they wanted to, the brother-sister mating thing was all about optimizing the Anunnaki genes in the offspring.
And retaining rights and retaining wealth.
And they're better because they're
The
better.
package deal. It's a package.
Well, they're better. They're obviously better. They're taller. They live a lot longer. There are all sorts of ways in which you can tell that, right? Because these were tall people too, weren't they?
Yes, yeah. And they had great clothes. Great robes.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
didn't-
Oh, yeah,
I
yeah.
guess
Oh, yeah, yeah.
uh,
So much so that, I mean, that descended from them, into the culture of Ur, and the garments from southern Mesopotamia were famous throughout the Middle East.
That's why you enjoyed the coronation so much.
Right, the golden robes.
I mean, it's just so over the top ridiculous.
Yeah.
I like the horses. That's the best
Wait.
grouping of so many great looking horses.
They were great looking horses, but doesn't it make you wonder where those, I mean, when was the last time that shit was used? Those horses and the carriages and stuff.
Queen
With that,
Elizabeth.
maybe the Jubilee or whatever, but where do they put them?
Well, they don't live that long.
Well, that's right. So how does this happen even? Well, the carriages somewhere.
The carriages.
Yeah.
Go somewhere.
Sorry.
Yeah. Okay, yeah. But that's, Jim's point was excellent that, a club-footed peasant isn't worth all that
Right.
much, but there's no reason why you can't have a Kaiser with a withered arm.
Yeah.
True.
They'll have, right. Or a Pharaoh with fat feet. There's no reason why you can't.
Well, if the Anunnaki came here from where they were living, this problem of they, what do I want to say? The genetic defects weren't obvious. We're not all around. We're not part of the general. They weren't ordinary. They could be fixed via Linda's methodologies.
Right. Why not?
And so it wasn't a problem, but it was a problem for humans, for the knockoffs, and possibly I would consider it's more likely that's when the taboo started to come in once the Anunnaki, maybe even before the humans realized that mating is what produced babies. The Anunnaki already knew and may have themselves, before we figured it out, that it was not practical and would have devastating social consequences, existential consequences. The Anunnaki already knew and saw it happening with some of their earlier tinkerings and said, no dice for that. No, just make it so, you know, tell them the lords of heaven will bring wrath upon you if you cross this taboo. No incest.
The taboo actually might be, again, we're saying, well, we figured it out, and we saw the downside, but I don't know if anybody's ever looked at chimps and gorillas, whether they also stay away from sibling matings. I don't know. No, I've never seen anything about them. In that
That's a
regard.
great question.
Yeah.
I mean, if they stay away from it, okay, it wasn't because they figured it out.
Right. Right.
It was figured out for them.
Well, I know in a little bit about wild horse behavior, and they haven't figured anything out that I'm aware of. But their behavior is such that offspring are dispersed.
Dispersed.
Dispersed, yeah.
Well, that makes it pretty much automatic then.
I mean, it's a herd, but they're dispersed.
And
of course, the other thing
So
is
within the same herd though, but just dispersed, so it's not like they don't cluster with the mother?
it's less likely that a daughter will be bred by its father.
Got it.
Okay, so it's figured out by a greater mind.
Instinct, whatever that is.
Yes.
Yeah, that's interesting.
But I'm not an expert on that, so. I think with wild dogs, wolves, doesn't dispersal happen also? I mean, there's only so much food for a pack of animals. I mean, you get 5, 6, 8 animals and dogs, and that's enough for that territory. Now you got to go 25, 30, 50 miles away to get adequate food source.
There's also, a part of the mechanism, if that's the right word, would have to do with interest, that a sibling may feel too, pardon the pun, familiar, to be interesting. And you are drawn elsewhere from just more the excitement of variety without having any reasoning behind it.
Well, there would be a lot of certain type of behavior of play between siblings. But then if you meet up with a non-sibling of an appropriate mating age, it would be different and curiosity takes over.
Yeah.
Interest, as you say.
Interest.
Right. But if I were on the side of the Anunnaki, I think I would have said no incest mating with this group of critters we got here. Although it must have been happening. Mike, wasn't there a time in human evolution when I believe I read somewhere that, and it was a reputable source that I read it in, was a human bottleneck, human population bottleneck in Namibia area of Southern Africa. Anybody?
Well, yeah, I remember reading something recently about a bottleneck, but I can't recall.
And there was something like only 15,000 humans. If I have that right, it couldn't have been 1,500.
Oh, yeah, I mean, it is.
So at that point, there probably was incest.
I mean, there's so much we're gonna be learning, in coming years. There was something just recently came out that the migration of Homo sapiens into Europe actually happened in 3 waves. The first 2 failed, and the third one succeeded. That's interesting. That's like, oh, that's like, okay, that's finer detail, and kind of makes more sense too. Okay. Want to make sure we have enough time to deal with this next. But the theme here is the Donald is not the only one that we have dealt with of this kind. Okay. And this is it's a review of a book by one of the Times columnists, Timothy Egan. The book is A Fever in the Heartland, subtitle, The Ku Klux Klan's Plot to Take Over America. Yes. So I'll just give you some highlights from the review, because we've known about the ones who kind of like approach Trump's way of being, the Huey Long, and Father Coughlin. But we don't know very much. Most of us never heard of a guy named, hang on a second, I'll come to it, I'm sorry, like Chamberlain, I think. Anyway, July 4th, 1923, in Kokomo, interesting with the K's, Kokomo, Indiana, Independence Day celebration. Flags, red, white, and blue bunting, watermelon pie, patriotic songs, parade, the usual thing, except that thousands and thousands of people were there wearing their white hoods. David C. Stevenson is the name, the Grand Dragon of the realm of Indiana at the time. And he got out of the airplane that he arrived there in, and members of the crowd dropped to their knees in rapture, reached out their arms, and he said, "My worthy subjects."
Oh.
Yeah. In the 1920s, there was the second coming of the KKK. And it played on the same mythology of white victimhood as the original, but the second Klan achieved an appeal way beyond the old Confederacy. The more expansive set of resentments, providing more points of entry for aggrieved white Protestants.
Gosh, this all sounds awful familiar.
Okay. Large numbers of Americans, for them, the Klan there's a quote from the book, gave meaning, shape, and purpose to the days. It was possible to do your shopping at Klan-approved stores and cook Klan-approved recipes, and to enroll your sons in the junior KKK and your daughters in the Tri-K Club, and spend evenings singing Klan songs. The KKK, in one of our current terms, was an entire ecosystem in the Middle West. Folks got their news from editors loyal to the Klan. The police and politicians were bribed. Businesses owned by Jews, Catholics, and Blacks were shaken down. And the leaders and recruiters got a cut on the initiation fees, the dues, and the sales of robes. You know, so it was a total scam. You know, this guy Stevenson ascended from an originally a corner gas bag, you know, into a demagogue. This is documented in this guy's book. He studied Mussolini's speeches because Mussolini was getting active around then, early 20s. And he described himself, Stevenson, as the world's foremost mass psychologist. Okay. He understood very well what made people hate. And he controlled the Klan eventually in 21 states. On his desk, he had a white phone that he claimed connected him directly to the president. And that was an office he expected to hold someday. Right. Extortion and embezzlement made him rich. Gee, what do you know? And the Klan made him powerful and for a time untouchable. He was also a sadistic sexual predator. And that's eventually what did him in. He went too far, and finally an abduction, rape, and murder was his undoing. But up until then, he drugged women and sexually assaulted them. On occasion, he would spend the night in jail, but he'd be escorted out the next day saying, "I am the law." And that was more truth than boast. So we've been there before. Sobering. I mean, there's
we came out okay in the end. How did that happen? Was it Roosevelt?
Oh, how did
that KKK wave turn down? What turned it down?
Well, I think
World War II?
I think one of the factors was the Grand Dragon, you know, getting exposed for what he was, and then, you know, a lot of the fever died out.
With the press, the media became courageous enough when they saw several of them would get together, and then the press could change, media could change. If before then you couldn't say anything on radio bad about them, but once one shoe fell, somebody started, then another guy started, and somebody else, and then the Chicago Tribune kicks in.
This reviewer says it's clear that Stevenson's trial, which was front page news everywhere, led many to abandon the Klan and even burn their robes. The fever in the heartland had broken within about 2 years of his undoing.
Mhm.
And the KKK lost most of its members.
But his undoing was a trial for murder and
Yes, yeah,
dismemberment or something horrible like that.
yeah,
I
yeah.
mean,
I mean, the woman, was slow to die, and she gave a deathbed testimony about, what he had done to her. Um, but he had not groomed a circle of well-known followers. So that's what's happening now is somewhat different. With this, the circle of wannabes. So, but thinking about this guy in particular, and putting him in, in perspective with Hitler and Stalin and Mao, to understand a being like this, it goes beyond psychological explanations. It goes beyond traumatization. I don't know, but the phrase comes to mind for me: the personification of evil. Like evil personified. And then what is evil?
Well, it's is that a way of saying they're not reachable
Well, they're not reachable.
by person of goodwill?
Yeah, they're totally refractory, but they're what got them there? Like what drew them there? And
Early success.
like yeah, but there's yes, power.
isn't it usually childhood trauma of some sort?
Not necessarily. I don't. Obviously, all of them were people who were not loved, but there's more to it than that. And I'm drawn to the concept that Wilhelm Reich had, that the life energy can somehow go bad. That there is a darkened form of it, a deadly form of the energy itself. It's like love sours in a way that becomes toxic. It's a toxic form of what is starts out or is inherently good. This is this is deep here. Is there a vibe? Is there an energetic reality that is evil, that is destructive, something different than simple chaos? We know that chaos interferes with natural order, but this is there something else at work? And I don't know. I just leave that question open. I don't know.
And well, you have me thinking, Mike, running quickly through a list that I'm forgetting too quickly with my age, of people that I've known that were on the bent to become like that. And how did it go? I don't know. A less forgiving society would have killed them early on. A sensible, practical, right, society that had some longevity to the culture, right? You can't have terrible things happening all the time. And somebody would have been encouraged to kill him. Or lose him in battle. Make
Mhm.
sure he doesn't come out of this one. Or tease him into, killing himself in battle, getting killed in battle. But I think our, Western European civilization, since coming out of the Middle Ages into the Enlightenment, is much more forgiving, compassionate. But that's the downside of compassion. Is you wait.
And I'm not sure we really believe in evil as a culture. I mean, I feel like our culture sees that the personality that would do harm to others or something as something that had been damaged itself, but not inherently evil and of its own right.
Well, yeah, Mike was saying that is that a basic energy of life gets dislocated, as it were, and it doesn't thrive as in ways we would call normal and healthy, and it takes experimentation towards deviant behaviors, antisocial, beating your playmate, to extremes, and then continues to grow, thinking that's the way I am.
But that leads to misfortune and bad outcomes.
Yes, it does. And
I think I would say if my imagination of evil is sort of the opposite of how I would see a saint, if such a thing exists, and that is somebody that doesn't experience misfortune, even though they can be incredibly damaging to others. I think we're seeing an example of that in our world right now. Personally, Mike, have I talked to you? Maybe I haven't talked about this before, but I see in Trump someone who, in the ordinary course of things, people who behave like he does meet with misfortune, but he does not, or he hasn't up until now. And I think he personifies something different.
That's what I'm trying to understand. Yeah. It's like, well, could it be that there are circumstances in a life as it begins to unfold that causes a sequestration, a sectioning off of I don't know if it's a quantum, but a stream of the life energy that gets cut off from the whole flow, and gets perverted, gets dark, toxic. Something happens to it because it's cut off. You might say this is like, fallen angel. It's cut off from the source. It is.
But you're using modern psychological picturing modeling of what's going on. An ancient person may say, when this person was 8 years old, a demon moved in.
They were possessed.
They were possessed. Yeah. Now now, are those two things different? Your psychological.
Yes, they are.
Okay.
If the initial subject was evil in people,
Right.
We're not looking at evil in nature, which might happen, but we're evil in people. And And how does that happen? And so it's not someone who's just maladjusted or mentally, a perception is like wavy in some, that's not a new psychological term, by the way, wavy.
New to me.
I mean, the village idiot might have been accommodated or not. The village idiot might have been bullied and finally maimed and killed. Or the village idiot may have just been suffered and tolerated and accepted, or something else. But the village idiot is not evil.
Yeah, we're not, that's not evil.
Right. The evil person in a French village in the Middle Ages wouldn't have had a long life.
I don't know how you define evil.
Unless they had good luck in battle.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, I guess to your point and to Linda's point, isn't that one of the issues, that how do you define evil? Because the main person we're speaking about now has such a following that while we on the call might find behavior evil, there are other people that are actually applauding it somehow, or at least him. He has such a backing.
I just look at a lifetime of evading negative consequences is
Thus
something
far, I
that
totally
I think
agree.
stands out as something different. And so so that's kind of
I guess I maintain hope that will change, the lifetime of evading the consequences.
and I suspect that it does and it can, one hopes too. But
to date.
Well, say with Mussolini, for example, or pick Hitler, is the population in general could see him as those two people as going to war against a common enemy.
a common enemy they created.
Well, they may or may not. I don't.
I'm thinking about Hitler and the Jews.
Oh. Yes. Or whatever they found to be antagonistic about the Poles when they invaded Poland,
Right.
for example. With Trump, we see him as working against us. In other words, we don't have an enemy that we can take this attack dog and put him against the Russians or something. No, it's the modern times. It's just, it doesn't work like that.
Well, or the enemy is against wokeness or something like that. And so that defines those of us.
That's still us.
That's right. That's still us.
And that may be the problem.
Well, yeah, that's why civil wars are the worst of all wars.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I recently listened to somebody, the author of the Fourth Turning is preparing a follow-up book. It'll be out in July.
The surviving author.
Yes, the surviving author. Yeah, that's right. I know, and I didn't read the first one. I didn't read the Fourth Turning, but I listened to him on an audio interview, and he postulates that we are at the point of, in this country, he wasn't talking about the world, at the point of close to a civil war zeitgeist. The emotional environment is very close to that, in that the sides, as they were, feel that they're they're existentially threatened, which means that you're not going to negotiate. There's no discussion.
It was a fascinating book, The Fourth Turning. I didn't know there was another one coming. By the way, one of the big fans of that book, Fourth Turning, was Steve Bannon.
Hmm.
Who decided
Well,
to
Fourth
apply
Turning
it a certain way.
is it sociological? I never read it.
It's based on generational cycles.
Right.
Generational cycles.
Yeah.
I want to make sure I've got time to delve into this a bit, because I was reflecting on how extraordinary is this story that's unfolding in our neighborhood, in our corner of the galaxy, in our little corner of the universe. Okay, so none of it is none of it's inevitable. None of it's even probable. Okay, the story that's being played out, enacted, embodied. Okay, by the one. There's like, well, God is a comedian, or God is a this. I'm contemplating the possibility that God is a storyteller. Because look at this story. So we have the solar system, which, all right, that evolves in a standard way. And there's this third planet, which is in a sweet spot around the sun, and has just the right chemical compositions, and there's evolution, and humanoids develop, and then, wow, some of the planets line up in a way that ejects this planet into space, but then these humanoids figure out a way to survive out there in the dark cold of space. Like, wow, like that's quite a story in and of itself. Then this planet of theirs comes in and has a near collision with the planet in the fifth orbit, and that creates a new planet shot in the third orbit. The planet in the fifth orbit transits into the third orbit, where evolution continues. It was several steps behind the evolution of the original planet in the third orbit, because it was further away and less warm, but had less solar energy. So evolution was somewhat behind, but it caught up, and hominins developed there. And then this advanced humanoids from the formerly third planet visited the new third planet, and in a laboratory created a hybridized race, and then later on did some natural hybridization. It's like, where is this story going? What's the next chapter? Like, what comes after all this strife and suffering that this hybrid species has been living through? Well, what's the outcome? I mean, is one of the things going on a cleansing, of the rigid and violent way of life that the advanced humanoids had developed on their artificial world? It's like in a good book. I'm breathless about the next chapter. And maybe we'll be seeing it. A great spirit who recently left this plane into the spirit plane, Harry Belafonte. Who I mean, he got me as a teenager. I mean, I had bongo drums, it is calypso music. He got an award from the Academy, and it might have been like a Lifetime Achievement Award, something like that. And he's standing there with his Oscar, and he's saying, "Boy, I wish I were going to be around for more of the 21st century, because I'm very curious about what Hollywood's going to do with it, and this could very well be a turning point for humanity." Okay. Well, maybe he's onto something. Maybe it will be.
Well, I mean, my whole life, we've had the capacity to destroy life on this planet, or at least human life on this planet. And in some cases, potentially the will to do so. So, I mean, it's gonna go one way or another. Doesn't it feel like it's kind of sitting on the edge? It sure feels like turning point to me.
Yeah, the big picture now is clearly not sustainable. It has
Right.
got to get better. It has got to get better,
I'd
or
like
it's
to
gonna.
differ. I'm gonna disagree. The
Okay,
big picture now, the big picture now, from a human point of view, is the consternation that Linda describes will continue. That's our destiny. We're just going to be on the edge of disaster, and it's going to be ongoing. And there's going to be new technologies, some of which will, most of which will appear to be unstoppable, and will be compressed. Our comprehension, our ability to comprehend the new stuff coming on, and work with it in the way we've grown up with. Apologies to younger people here, but we are going to be stressed, and re-stressed. A sense of humor will become the most valuable item.
Well, that's actually pretty positive from my perspective.
Our guiding theme is going to be oy vey.
Oy vey, yeah.
Pretty much.
Well, that could be, but an alternative view is that it is not sustainable, and that it is either going to get a lot worse and really go down the drain, or it's going to get a lot better, because it's not sustainable. Who knows? Nobody. Well, clearly nobody knows.
Nobody knows.
Well, every what do I want to say? Every Malthusian prophecy has failed so far, and they've been well accepted in their day, and been inaccurate.
That's right.
In modern times. Now, I'm not referring back to. I mean, I'm thinking Malthusian global. I'm not saying a village or a country or a Sahara region, but global.
Right. So it's possible that, as crazy as we are, the viruses are going to save us.
But some either, whether it's good luck, but some wily human, some rascal is going to say, what about, let's go this way here. Oh, look at that happened. I mean, we say technology, but I mean, it's perception of the novel. It's a sense of invention, an imagination, or a willingness to accept something brand new right in front of you, and insisting that other people look at it.
Well, as we are on the verge of entering the age of artificial stupidity.
Yes.
um, it's an interesting time.
Yeah.
Yeah, in that regard, I enjoy your views, James, because I'm also worried about this point of inflection and the downsides of AI. Not that it doesn't hold a world of beneficial potential, but I'm worried about the downsides and the potential point of inflection.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's the problem. There's always some nasty person out there ready to take advantage of it and thinking they can get away with it. In a French medieval village, believe me, such a person would have been met with an accident. But we're too compassionate. They grow up now.
Either that or they've learned to hide better.
And there's that. Yep.
I mean, these guys, these people that decide to murder strangers, is that evil? Certainly the act itself is. So more and more of these people are showing up that don't stand out in any real way. You know, I mean, I like to think we could, you know, if we had better or something, that we could avoid these awful things with people going out and shooting up malls. But in fact, I don't think that's the case. I don't think these guys show up in any way. So I don't know. I hope you're right, actually. The continued frustration as opposed to total societal collapse appeals to me. Sorry, Mike, we're talking a lot today.
Yeah. Oh, I'm enjoying it.
Oh, good.
Well,
Me
it's
too.
all born from it's Mike, when did humans, either as hybrids or as humans, when did they develop this an interest to learn what's next that a storyteller depends on? If the audience didn't care what was next, didn't even know to ask,
Yeah, there wouldn't be any stories at all.
I don't think there'd be any stories. Yeah,
They
Well,
wouldn't have had Scheherazade.
exactly.
when? Well, I don't think we were ever without it. I don't think life was ever without it. I think one of the inherent qualities of the of the life energy is a thirst for learning, is curiosity. In the same way that the healing process is inherent in the life energy, so is the learning process.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and so the next
Self-awareness that could ask, a self-awareness that could ask, here I am, what's next?
what's next for me?
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, and it's been speculated that's one of the things that humanity is providing for the all. It's like the all is also curious about what's next for me. You know, that we're part of, you know, the cosmic learning. Okay. That we are an instructive set of puppets on this stage.
I'm sorry, I missed that. An instructive set of
Puppets.
what?
I don't like that.
A bit.
I'm no puppet.
Puppets. Well, how about microbes? I'm comfortable with being analogous to a microbe.
Okay, take back puppet. Although Pinocchio became real, you know.
Unless we get to become real boys at some point, the puppet metaphors are gonna work for.
Yeah, sorry, take that, take that back. Okay. I'm running out of voice.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
That is Delia. How's
Thank you.
Delia? I haven't talked to her in a little while. Is Delia okay?
Yeah, she, hopefully she and Paula will pick this up. Now I'm gonna stop the recording.
Okay.
All right, is there anything you want to say that you didn't want recorded? How's your chance?
I think what I'm seeing going on in the world looks hopeful. I really do. I feel like there's the battle is really between agreed structure and chaos. And I understand the desire for chaos. If the current structure doesn't work for you, chaos might look pretty good because you want to change. But I think we're seeing a little movement back toward maybe things aren't so terrible after all. We'll see, but I'm feeling this optimistic.
Good, good.
Yeah.
Thought I'd share that.
How many people here in this group are turned off by astrology? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Everybody?
No, not me, not at all.
No, you said
Well,
turned off, right?
You said turned off.
I said turned off,
Yeah, no, not me.
as in dislike. Okay, well, I mentioned that because I just recently read someone who's very competent in Vedic astrology. And she fingered last Friday, it was, yeah, 5th of May, as sustaining a lunar eclipse. The planet had a lunar eclipse, not visible in North America.
No, someplace in Australia.
Yeah.
Right.
And that, because of that eclipse and because of the way everything else in the galaxy is positioned at the time of the eclipse, right, as the turning point. From now on, everything in the world as we know it will be becoming different. I emphasize becoming. She didn't say becoming. I put that in.
Well, when's the age of Aquarius supposed to actually start, Mike? Isn't it a few hundred years from now, or something like that?
So, you know, I'll play with what people say about facts, you know, or statistics, you know, astrology doesn't lie, but liars use astrology, you know. So it to me it's like a lot of pharmaceutical agents, terribly underused and terribly overused, you know. Ignore it at your peril, but overuse it and overindulge it at your peril, you know. Like all things, needs to be understood in moderation. The different systems, you know, like, well, you know, there's Western astrology, there's Vedic astrology, there's Chinese astrology, you know, there's even Irish astrology, believe it or not, you know. On important things, they tend to agree.
But they're all looking at the same physical bodies.
But the thing is, you got to be totally into that. So, in other words, something in Vedic astrology may, if you read it out, it's completely opposite of what you'd be getting from Taoist astrology. You know?
So it's interpretation.
But if you're totally in the system, it totally makes sense. You have to be in that, completely in that system.
Yeah, it's like Bible studies.
Yeah. I mean, these are divine systems of understanding, of experience. They are received systems. Western astrology.
Well, and I think it's worth noting that astrology was well developed before Sumeria, right? Have you ever looked to try to find the wellspring, the source? Where did astrology come from? You can't find it.
It came from the Anunnaki.
I'm sure it came from the Anunnaki. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't doubt that it's real. I don't understand it.
We have derivative interpretations, if you
We
will.
definitely have to.
Maybe a few ad hoc, you know, interpretations
Mhm.
on whatever basis. But it was basically its observation of the skies, coupled with correlation to human observation on this planet, but more specifically, coupled to correlations with human observations of human behavior.
It's all observational, and there was an explanation for it all that came to somebody. This was the guy who got the download about. I'm so glad we're not recording this. Got the download. Got the download of the human design system, and the entity that was speaking to him said, "Look, this is how it's working. That the planets are great bodies of consciousness, that we know,
Mhm.
and they are bodies of consciousness with their own, you might say, personalities. You know, yes." Jupiter is expansive and generous and, you know, gift giving, you know, and Saturn is the teacher and the rule giver and limit, you know, all these things, and Venus and Mercury. Okay. And they are in constant conversation, like a family, always, you know, taking different positions with each other. So they are opposed, they're aligned, you know, they're triangulated. So they're in a constant conversation. Okay. And he said, and there are streams of neutrinos. Actually, there's more than one stream, but the streams of neutrinos flowing through the solar system constantly. And these neutrinos are getting impressed with. They are recording moment by moment the conversation that's going on between the planetary spirits, the planetary consciousness. And these neutrinos, as they pass through the Earth, are impressing themselves on the vast majority of your DNA, which is not chromosomal. Which standard biology says, well, we don't know why it's there, it's just there, you know, as if something as important as the majority of your DNA could be just there and not have a function. You know?
Is that what's referred to as a junk DNA?
Yeah, junk DNA, right. right.
the 85 or 90% of the DNA.
Right, right. And so what this message said, you know, you're getting an imprint when you're conceived, you're getting an imprint when you're born, and that's your astrologic chart. That's your birth chart. Okay. And then you're getting an imprint every day. So those are your transits. So, you are in constant, different parts of that junk DNA, are getting, different layers of information constantly. So you are internally processing, in every nucleus of every cell, you're processing the solar system's conversation.
You're part of it.
You're part of it, so this is a specific semi-material way, material way, in which, you are part of the all. Microcosm, macrocosm, no essential separation.
Makes sense to me.
Wow. Yeah. And this guy, those of you who know the human design system at all, he was given a download that really unified in a single system earlier downloads. So it includes planetary astrology, it includes the I Ching, it includes the chakras, and includes the channels between the chakras, as in the Tree of Life in the Kabbalah, all in one system. And when I first heard about it, I said, "Yeah, sure, right."
Who is this guy? I don't know who you're talking about.
Oh, he's gone now. But he had he adopted the name of Ra, R-A-H, and it got a little more complicated. But he got this message. I would not have given this system any credence. They want somebody put together these other ancient systems. Yeah, right, sure. But he didn't. It came as a voice that dictated the system to him over a period of months. After which, the voice said, "Bye, good luck," and he realized that, either little old him, had been designated as a vessel to convey a really powerful means of understanding life, or he was schizophrenic, and he had this completely, useless, meaningless, hallucination, auditory hallucination for.
If one were sensible to, can I say, sensitive to the great variety of radiations permeating us, I think you'd be more than schizophrenic. You'd be scattered.
Well, yeah, that's what. Yeah, we have. Fortunately, we have our own ozone layers, you might say. We have our own filters that keep us from getting overwhelmed. I mean, if we were actually processing all of the sensory and energetic inputs that were flying our way, we'd fall apart. And that's why, that's one of the ways in which schizophrenia develops. Those folks, they don't have the filters. No, our filters are pretty good. The affect system, in the excuse me, in the limbic brain, the affect system works to actually help us select which inputting sensations, which inputting data is worth paying attention to, and it allows us to, it helps to emphasize those so we can pay attention to what's critical, whether it's the sight of that tiger looking at us through the forest, or or the smell of that steak on the grill. We are helped to to identify what's most important through our filters. But yeah, without those filters, we'd be goners. Would be,
and the story and the training from listening to stories, which develops our innate interest in learning or paying attention to what's next, to answer that question, to be curious as to what's next.
Mhm.
yes.
So what's next, Mike?
Oh, and brief interruption, Mike, just if you care, I don't know if it's just my interface that didn't correct itself, but according to my interface, you are still recording.
According to mine, you are still recording.
Uh-oh.
Well done.
I'm sure you can always clip if you choose to, or do whatever you want to do, but I just wanted to convey that.
I will confer with my editor.
An accident purely by chance.
I said, I pushed, that'll learn me. I mean, this is pause, stop, and then there's the restart, and
Good going, Shane.
I guess there were no real mistakes. There were no real mistakes, are there?
No.
Not really. Only things that look that way. Okay.
Here.
Thank you.
I think what's next will be right now, the second Tuesday in June, whatever that date that is.
Where's the movie?
Huh?
Movie? I was asking about the movie.
Well, if you the scene, the movie scene right now is that I'm going to be raising a modest sum of money to hire a name screenwriter, an
Right,
A-list.
so we're still in that step.
Yeah,
Right,
yeah. So if you I'm looking for people who welcome a golden opportunity to lose some money for a good cause.
So is this a donation or an investment?
It's an investment. The investment document is quite solid. The minimum buy-in is $5,000, and that could easily turn into zero.
If
if
the
it's a
movie
flop.
doesn't make any money?
Right. If it makes no money at all, it could easily turn into zero. Or if Amazon buys the rights soon for a couple $1 million, okay, that 5,000 could easily become 10 or 12.
Oh,
Yeah. So totally unpredictable, but no,
yeah.
it's an investment, and there's an investment agreement, legally solid.
Good.
So more, and by the time I haven't begun my serious phone calling, but I will in the next few days. So by the time we next meet in 4 weeks, I may have some news for you all. And of course, in a month, the screenwriters might be kind of hungry.
Good thought. That's right. Might
You
be
know,
able to find.
and-
a
Good
really
point.
primo.
You know, so it may be that, you know,
Yeah.
once again, this, you know, we're there, once again, it's like, okay, this does seem to be blessed. This process does seem to be blessed.
Yeah,
I mean, if that turns out to be true, it's like, wow.
it
Wow.
sure feels like it, Mike.
And that, you know, that could be that this, you know, screenwriters will be maybe not so hungry for money, but like wanting to get back in the action, you know, and bored. We'll see.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure, but yes, but they're not working at all right now, are they?
Right, right. Well, right. I'm, you know, they're, yeah, they may all have stopped, although if they've got projects going already, you know, outside of the studio system, they may well be still working on it. I don't think, I don't know, you know, what the freelancers, you know, where they are. And it's probably, it's gonna be one of those guys or gals that, you know, that we come up with. They of course have got to read the book. They got to agree to do that, you know.
Well, and there is you already have a script, don't you? Or do you?
We have a story. Okay,
Oh, okay, all right.
okay, we had a screenplay.
That's what I thought. What happened? Oh, we changed it. They didn't like it.
My producer, my new producer buddy, says, he said, Mike, he said, this has absolutely no commercial future whatsoever. This is not a viable screenplay, and here's why.
Gee, tell me the truth.
Yeah.
Yeah. Don't.
Well, the truth is worth an awful lot.
Sure.
So I said, okay, David, what do I got to do? What do we do next? You know, because I seem to have this ability to bounce back, you know, because initially I went through the floor with that, you know.
Oh, I'm sure.
You know,
You've worked
and
a
then
long
it was,
time. on
okay,
this.
what, all right, what's next, you know?
Yeah.
And I did a rewrite, you know. I wrote the story that would be the basis for a better screenplay. Okay, and now it's okay. If we want this to fly, we have to get a screenwriter who not only is skilled, you know, deft and creative, but also recognized by the studios.
Right.
Somebody who's done some, you know, has had some successful movies made. Okay. So that's who we'll find. That's who we'll find soon.
Well, and you're going into a period where a lot of creative stuff is going to be on hold. So the timing also seems really good, doesn't it?
The timing is perfect. The timing.
Okay.
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 Right, everybody.
All right.
Good night. Good night. It's
Good
been
night.
terrific.
Good night.
See you in 4 weeks.
Soon.
Good night. Sounds good.